In today's video, we are going to learn how to make the Churn dash quilt block. I used a lot of contrast on this one, which is not normally what I do. I usually use a lot of scraps that kind of blend in, but I really liked the contrast of this one. But this is called the Churn dash quilt block because apparently it looks like a butter churn from the top down view. I believe that's right. I read that somewhere recently when I was looking up quilt blocks. But today we're going to learn how to make this. Super simple. I know it looks fancy. We break it down, we make it easy, simplify it so that everybody can do it. Also, I apologize if you hear some background noise. I did not post a video last week. Last week was very much a whirlwind. We were out of power for almost a week. There was a storm that blew through. There was a giant tree that fell in our yard. It was kind of chaos. Luckily, nobody was hurt, and luckily, the house also did not get hurt either, which was completely miraculous. But the way that it fell, it's just literally completely in the backyard. It was about 3 feet away from hitting the house, which I told my husband, I was like, I cannot believe that did not hit the house. But anywho, so we were staying with a relative and all of that, and I did not get to finish editing my video. But yes, I do apologize for missing a week because of the circumstances, but we are back up. We just now also got internet in the house as of today, so there's been a lot of things going on this past week. On to the video. Here is what the Churn dash quilt block is going to look like. First off, you're going to grab you some scrap fabric because that's what we like to use around here. And these are the pieces of fabric that I'm going to use. You're going to be using some kind of 2 block. I think in the quilting world, it'd probably be like potato chip pieces. But you're going to be using 4 of those, which those are the ones that are in the middle here. And the size on those is going to be, I did the 9-inch block, so the size of those should be 2.5 by 4.5 rectangles. We are also going to need some half square triangles for the corners, which I'm going to be making those out of the bigger pieces that are shown. And then we're also going to need 1 square that is going to be for the middle. So you can see on the diagram that the half square triangles are going to be in the corners. The potato chip type blocks are going to be in the other spots. I'm going to put my potato chips over to the side for now, and we're going to focus on the half square triangles. Now, if you've been on my channel for a while, you are probably going to be a pro at doing this, but I'd like to break it down and show everybody how to do it every time that I make them. So what you're going to do is take these squares. Now the ones I'm using are 4.5 by 4.5 inch squares, but you're going to take your blocks and you're going to put the pretty sides together. Now, once you've got those pretty sides together, what you're going to do is you're going to take a marking tool, some sort of pencil. I use a pen that the ink goes away with heat, and I will just go right down the diagonal with my ruler, and I will mark right there in the middle. Now, what we're going to be doing to make our half square triangles is we are going to be sewing a 1/4 inch on either side of this line when we take it to our sewing machine. And once I get over there, it'll make more sense. But you're just going to mark that on both of your pairs of squares. And then, like I said, we're going to go to the machine and you're going to sew a 1/4 inch of a seam allowance on both sides of that line. Now, I ended up sewing these a little bit weird. I don't know why I switched sides in the middle of this, but on this one, I started out on the right of the line, and then when I added the second one, I switched over. That's not for any particular reason except for me having a little bit of a brain fart, I guess, a little bit of a brain spasm. But again, it's been a long week. But what you're going to do is on both sides of that line is you're going to do a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now on my machine, a 1/4 inch lines up with the edge of my presser foot. And that's usually what I will align with whenever I am sewing. So we're going to go and sew down the other side of that line. And then I had a little bit of a time trying to figure out how to get it on the other side, but I did figure it out. I was just like, what in the world am I doing? So I had to pull on my threads a little bit. I do not recommend this. I recommend just chain piecing like a normal person, but anywho, however it gets done, that's all that matters. Now, once you get those sewn and taken back to your sewing table, what you're going to do is we are going to take our rotary cutter. I highly recommend you get a rotary cutter. It's one of my favorite sewing tools. But what you're going to do is that line that you marked right down the middle, you're going to take your cutter. You can use scissors if you want, but I just really like how versatile these are. And I will let you all know, for those of you that have been following the saga of my cutting of my rotary cutter, I changed the blade earlier this week. I have been talking about changing my blade, and y'all have been telling me to do it for weeks. I actually did it. So I feel like I get a pat on the back for that one. But it's so much better and it's so amazing with the new blade. But once you cut down the middle, you're going to have your 4 half square triangles. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to get everything sewn together before we go to press it. But this is what you're going to be left with. And what we'll do is we will press and cut down and trim everything down in just a minute. So right now, just go ahead and put those to the side and we will go to our little potato chips. And with these, we're going to be doing the exact same thing. We're going to be putting them pretty sides together and sewing a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So what you'll do, just pretty sides together. And I like to use my clips because they are very convenient, but also feel free to use pins if that's what you got. But I'll go ahead and put a little clip on there and we'll take it to the machine and sew 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now, once you get that done, you're going to take it back to your sewing mat. You're going to cut all of those apart. And now the way that I like to do this whenever I press them is I'm going to press the seam to the dark side. And as you can see, our little potato chips are a tiny bit smaller than our middle square. And I believe it's because of the seam size that I was using. That 1/4 inch, I really do probably need to calibrate it a little bit better, but it's close enough for me. And once we get towards the end, you'll see that it's not really a huge deal. If you want to be perfect with it, then feel free to go a different way, but with me, I'm okay with it. So now we're going to take our potato chips and we're going to take our half square triangles and we're going to get everything pressed and ironed and cut down and good to go. So like I said before, what we're going to do is we're going to press our seams to the dark side of our potato chips. And now what will probably happen is later on you'll have to actually press the seam in the opposite direction. It'll make sense once we get more seams back there, but usually when I have a lot of seams going on, I let them tell me how they want to lay. Now what I'm doing is I'm just spritzing all of my blocks with a little bit of water. That's also going to help me manage them a little bit better. But what we're going to do is go ahead and press all of our seams and get everything trimmed up and ready to combine. Now on our half square triangles, what we're going to do is we want to make sure that they are the same size as our middle square. Our middle square is 3.5 by 3.5 inches. So we are going to go ahead and trim down those half square triangles so that they are the same. I'm using my handy dandy ruler because it's just my favorite, and it's the smallest, just like not in my way ever. But you can see how much I'm cutting off and how much I could have made those smaller, but I usually will tend to go bigger and then cut down as needed, just so that I've got plenty of space and plenty of material to use. But if you want to be particular and start out with a specific size that it should be, I can give you those measurements down below. Now, once you get all of your blocks trimmed up and ironed and pressed and ready to go, now comes the fun part. This is always my best and most fun part, is the assembly step. And this is where your creativity can come to life. Now, what we're going to do is we are going to arrange it as the pattern has it, as a true churn dash quilt block. And so we're going to do that first, and then I'm going to show y'all some different ways that you can arrange it if you want to have a different look. And now this is also going to depend on if you use light colored fabrics or dark value fabrics or things like that as far as the look that you're going to get. But since I did go more traditional with this, we're going to start out that way, and then we can start turning things around, and you can see the different positions and the different types of layouts that you can do just by turning things around. And I really, really love that about quilt blocks because, even if I don't know what the names of them are, I do know the things that I like to look at. So you can see this is going to be a variation of that churn dash. And then you can turn those around and you can do something different. There's so many variables and variations that you can do. And that's what I really, really enjoy about sewing. If you want to fancify your block, that's a technical term, then you can go ahead and switch some things around. But there's so many different ways that you can orient this. You do you. Now, what I decided was, since I am doing this tutorial like this, that I was just going to keep it simple and keep it standard. So I went back to the original orientation of the block and went ahead, and that is what we're going to settle with. So now we are going to start with the assembly. And the way that I assemble my blocks is I like to chain piece as much as I can. I'm going to take this first row, and then I'm going to take that second piece and I'm going to put them together, and we are going to chain piece those, and then we will add the third column after that. So what we'll do is we'll lay those together and take a little clip or a pin, and we will just lay that over. And then once we go to our sewing machine, we are going to sew that with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now, once you get those sewn, you're going to come back to your table, and then you're going to do the exact same thing on that third column. Now, once you get everything sewn, it's time to go back to the ironing board, and you can kind of see how the seams are laying so far, and I just kind of roll with that. Like these ones right here want to lay down this way, so I'm just going to press them in that direction, and then I'll compensate for that on the next row whenever I get to that. But these wanted to lay kind of open, I guess. So the middle ones, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have those lay inward, so that when we put our seams together, they just kind of nest in place. Once you get all that pressed, what you're going to go ahead and do is you're going to lay those seams right next to each other and just make sure that they are laying nice and neat and that they are playing well together. Then we're pretty much done. We're going to go back to the machine, and those two seams, we're going to do a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now, once you get all of your seams ironed and pressed and ready to go, then you are left with a beautiful quilt block that I think would look really nice on a tote bag. You know, this would also probably look pretty cool on like a sweatshirt. Like if you wanted to upcycle a sweatshirt and you wanted to put like a quilt block on it, I think that that would be kind of neat for that application as well. But there you go, you are done, and you have you a lovely Churn Dash quilt block. And mine, with the measurements that I used, ended up being 9 inches by 9 inches square. And you know, you can feel free to make this as big as small as you want, but I tend to like that 9-inch size for the things that I make. But there is your block. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions. And I appreciate you watching. If you want to see more quilt blocks, I would love if you would subscribe to my channel, and I will see you next time.